folks. Welcome to a special election edition of Hames Hot Mic. I'm your host, Clint Hames. I'm doing short interviews with the federal candidates for the September 20th federal election in the Chilliwack-Hope riding. As always, trying to keep my viewers as informed and engaged as possible. Today's guest is Art Green, representing the Green Party of Canada. Art, welcome.
Oh, thanks, Clint. It's a real privilege to be here.
Thank you. I'm trying to make sure that everybody gets lots of opportunities in this age of COVID to make sure they can get their message out. Why don't we start by having you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and what inspired yet another run for the Green Party.
Well, first of all, my name is Arthur Green, and I was born in Mission, British Columbia, back in halfway through the last century. I lived all my life here in the Fraser Valley. I actually went to school in Agassiz Elementary Secondary, and I went to school there from grade 1 to 12 in the same school. How many people have done that? I've studied accounting and forestry. After graduation, I worked with the BC Forest Service. And then later on, I got involved in the BC film industry, and I've been a department head in the BC film industry for some of the largest mass media corporations in North America for the last 35 years. And politics has always been a passion of mine, and my good friend Elizabeth May once asked me, he says, Art, you're a pretty astute young fellow. Why don't you come and run with us for the Green Party? And I said, what party? And she said, the Green Party. And I said, well, that seems an appropriate name for me, considering that my last name is Green. So anyways, I let her talk me into it, and I found out that, politics in North America, well, Canada, but especially in North America, is not as, it's a little bit corrupt when you consider how partisan it is. Political parties, I've found they'll do anything to keep themselves in power rather than look out for the best interests of their constituents. And that was quite, it kind of bugged me a little bit. So I jumped in, and there was this brand new riding. It was called Mission Matsqui Fraser Canyon. And I said, okay, I can do that. I was born in Mission. I lived in Agassiz for, 20 years. I've lived up and down the Fraser Canyon for a great length of time. And, it was a good fit for me. So I did that, and my first year I got 5.1% of the vote, and that doesn't sound very good, but at that particular year, the average Green Party candidate got 3.45% of the vote, so I actually got 50% more than the average member of the Green Party in that 2015 election.
Well, it's really interesting. One of the things that you've said is that there's partisanship in politics. And something interesting I've always found with the Green Party is that you can't really say the Green Party is a left party or a right party. It's very clearly a party that thinks the environment and looking at our natural environment through that lens as we make decisions is really important. But it doesn't seem to align itself in the traditional ways that parties align themselves, sort of left or right. Is there a left or a right to the Green Party?
Well, we like to think that we move straight forward ahead. And, our environmental policy is tied very closely to our economic policy. We believe that Canada's resources are being wasted. We should be, refining and smelting and producing, getting away from just selling off primary resources rather than refine and manufacture here in Canada. And we think we're losing a lot of economic clout because of that. For example, this expanded TMX pipeline that's going to be shipping bitumen, and a lot of people think it's oil that this expanded pipeline is for, and it's not oil. It's a mine product. It's like It's like a sand, it's tar sand, and they mix it with a diluent so it'll flow through the pipeline. But then there's no place in North America that they can actually refine it, so they stick it on ships and they send it across the sea, and they basically give it away to, there's a refinery in Asia, I forget exactly where it is, but anyways, because they don't have the same kind of labor laws and the environmental policies and whatnot that we do here in North America, they can get away with just, the cheapest type of refining possible, and it's not a good thing, and we don't actually make much money off it. I mean, we do create a lot of jobs, but it's heavily subsidized by the federal government.
So I want to stop you there, because the issue that a lot of candidates talk about is, especially if they're talking from that perspective, say, we've got to end the subsidies to oil and gas. Well, how do we get primary production in our country? If we could afford to do that in our country right now, we would. So obviously there's going to have to be some government incentive to do that. How do you provide government incentive without driving us deeper in a hole that we seem to be passionate about digging deeper?
Well, personally, I've never been much of a free trade kind of guy. I'm more of a fair trade kind of a guy. And why are we producing a product and exporting it if we can't actually make a profit on it on its own merit? This doesn't make any sense to me. We're causing this great environmental disaster. The tar sands in Alberta, it's destroyed millions and millions of acres. I don't know how we go about fixing that problem. It's such a large mess that we've made. Why don't we, for example, we have I think we have the 4th largest oil reserves in the world. So why don't we refine our products here in Canada and then ship out or export refined product? There's a lot more money involved. The profit's a lot greater.
So why do you think that doesn't happen in Canada today? What
think
stops somebody from saying, I think I could make money doing that?
Well, I think it's because of the overall cost, and the only reason that we're shipping bitumen across the ocean for nothing now is because the federal government went out and bought us a $12 billion pipeline so that we could give our natural resources away and create a bunch of jobs. So hopefully those people in Alberta and the people in the oil sector will vote for Mr. Trudeau in this coming election. Everything is tied to politics and keeping the parties in power. And this is why I'm saying that by the very definition of the word, partisan politics is corrupt. And we've got to get away from partisan politics. We need to revamp our Westminster democracy and make it a more, what's the word that we like to use? So everybody is represented, every vote is represented in Parliament, and every vote counts. It has to be more proportional to the way people vote. And if we had a proportional representation system in Canada, then every vote would count and every vote would be represented in Canada, and governments, political parties would actually, well, there wouldn't be any political parties. They would have to actually collaborate. So, right now, we can't get a consensus on anything in our government, even on items that are of common interest. One party brings it up and the other party has to vote it down, because that's the whole nature of the partisan system.
Well, when we're dealing in right now where we have a minority government, that absolutely happens. But when there's a majority parliament, one party tends to be able to run their agenda pretty cleanly until the next election. So what would you say, and I know there's a lot of people who think that proportional representation is the answer to moving forward as a country. I don't want to debate that, but what would you say to people that say that just takes further divisions in our parliamentary system and you'd get absolutely nothing done if our parliament had representation from 50 different agendas as opposed to maybe 2 or 3?
Well, Clint, I kind of have to disagree with you there because, generally what happens, because we're a multi-party system in Canada, is that when we have a government that wins a majority, it's usually about 40% of the vote. So you get a political party with 40% of the vote that has 100% of the power. So they run shipshaw on us for their 4 years, and then perhaps we vote them out and we put another party in, and it's the same thing. They're 40% of base vote. They get to call all the shots, and then they go, well, you know what? Those guys in the last parliament, I don't like what they did. Let's nix all that stuff and we'll start again. Consequently, nothing ever gets done. We are so far behind. I used to think that Canada was like the #1 country in the world until I visited Europe for about 9 weeks, and I realized, you know what? We're so far behind, we just think we're first. I mean, how could we not? We trail the Europeans in their infrastructure, in their trade laws, and It's almost embarrassing, actually. So I kind of disagree with that last statement.
Okay, fair enough. I want to talk about the Green Party's platform, especially from an economic perspective, because I think that's an area that I feel like is important for people to understand. We're talking about new programs, we're talking about new approaches, we're talking about potentially subsidizing industry so that we can make things in Canada. How do we pay for that? Right now, the country's got a $380 billion deficit. That's 10 times higher than it traditionally is. Yes, COVID's a factor, but it's not the only factor. How do we start talking about new programs when we're facing that kind of fiscal restraint?
Well, it's really difficult to talk about new anything when we are, what are we now? We're over $1 trillion in debt. Yep. So, I mean, what's our interest payments on that? I mean, it's mind-boggling. So, our approach is that, we think that if we transition our government and our political status to a system where we actually clean the earth, if we transition to clean and renewable energy systems, we can create enough economy and create enough profit for our governments that we can actually get out of debt. Can you imagine the economy that we can create if we transition all vehicles to electric? The plants that we'd have to build to do that, the number of people it would take to build those cars, or even upgrading all our buildings. So, we lose 30% of all our energy in Canada through leaky buildings. I mean, we could be offering all kinds of incentives for people to upgrade their buildings, and we could put thousands and thousands of carpenters back to work, insulators and plumbers and, heating guys and, all that sort of stuff. So actually the transition to clean and renewable energy systems is our way to, stimulate the economy, to get us back on track. We think that it'll actually create the greatest economic catalyst that the world will ever see. And I don't know anybody else or any other party that has a better idea than that. So
I like to thank you for those comments, because I think we often tend to think about parties that espouse a philosophy that starts with the environment, that somehow that's going to cost more money. And oftentimes the solutions that are put forward are solutions that in fact will create wealth, as you've explained. So Art Green, thank you so much for taking some time to spend with me today. I think it's really important for the viewers and for people in Chilliwack-Hope to understand who the folks are that are seeking their votes. So thank you, and thanks to the viewers for this episode of Hames Hot Mic.
Thank you.